Welcome to City and State TV. I'm Executive Editor Michael Johnson. I'm joined today by Steve Eide. He's a Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, their Center for State and Local Leadership. And you have a new report out, a study out that's the Poverty and Progress in New York, Crime and Welfare Enrollment 1 year into the Blasio administration. Thanks for joining us first.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
And tell us a little bit about this study and why you are doing this monumental task of trying to track crime, welfare in somewhat real time.
Yeah, well, the general framework is kind of another look at the tale of two cities. When Mayor de Blasio talks about, ending the tale of two cities, addressing the tale of two cities, he's talking about, socioeconomic measures. In this report series, we're also trying to look at kind of government services. Are conditions in the city's poorest neighborhoods, the lowest income neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs, how are they improving under this new administration, which claims to be departing from past administrations and giving more attention to those neighborhoods that were supposedly left behind by the progress of the last few decades? So in this particular report, we're looking at policing, not only levels of crime, but also demand for crime in poor neighborhoods versus wealthy neighborhoods, also the application of policing tactics, the so-called broken windows debate, and then we're looking at trends in welfare enrollment as well.
And I know with any first term, it's very difficult to kind of see if these policies are actually taking hold because it takes several months to even get these policies implemented. You can't really just turn on a dime. But did you see any development? I know you did this multiple times throughout the year to track this stuff. Do you see, as you move through the year, anything that really stuck out?
Well, the most interesting thing, this particular report is that welfare enrollment is up in New York City. New York City ended 2014 with more people on welfare than it began 2014. That's interesting for a few reasons, most notably that it was a good year for the economy. Job growth was up. I don't think you can really say that it's just because, that all the economic gains over the past year went to Wall Street or went to the 1%. I think there are some indications that some of that economic progress filtered down to poor New Yorkers. There were, jobs in low-wage industries were up, and the jobs in the Bronx were up. It's also curious that the trends in SNAP, food stamp, that was down over the course of the year. And the Commissioner Banks, the head of the city's HRA department, suggested that the decline in SNAP had something to do with better economic conditions. But for some reason, welfare is not working like that.
And just to kind of talk about the welfare aspect of it, which was, I think, the biggest headline grabber that came out of this. You're studying the actual people who that applied and went on to welfare, and that could have been somewhat reflected on just a city initiative to try to get more people on welfare not necessarily increase in poverty per se, because tracking poverty is obviously very difficult.
Yeah, we're trying to be very hesitant about whether or not policy changes are behind this development. Specifically, what the city is trying to do under Mayor de Blasio, how they're trying to depart with the Bloomberg administration, there are really two things. First of all, they want to place more emphasis on education and training programs as a way to get people off the caseload and into jobs, promote economic mobility, as opposed to exclusive focus on work experience. Secondly, they want to be more lenient in terms of enforcing the requirements of cash assistance recipients have to perform. Most importantly, they have to comply with a work assistance, a work activity requirement. Many of them. And then they have to show up at appointments, they have to show up at meetings. The Bloomberg administration was very firm about how you really need to comply with those requirements in order to receive your benefits. The Blasio administration think that they can be more effective ultimately in promoting economic mobility by enforcing the rules less forthrightly than Bloomberg did. So those are the policy changes. Perhaps we're seeing the effect of at least the more leniency in enforcing the rules. Perhaps we're seeing that connected to the rise in monthly enrollment, perhaps.
And then crime seemed like it was fairly consistent over the last year. It didn't really go up much. It actually, de Blasio touted it as it went down, significantly, though it didn't really go down significantly. It went down slightly. But why did you pick welfare and crime to kind of do the study together? And how are those two interrelated in what you've been studying and looking at?
Well, first of all, they're two things that are easiest to measure in terms of the data that the city puts out for welfare and crime is good. It's reliable on an ongoing basis. And in terms of crime, if you look at crime statistics, comparing murder rate in wealthy neighborhoods versus poor neighborhoods, the tale of two cities really stands out very, very starkly. Because it happens to be the case that there still are far more murders in East New York than on the Upper East Side. So that's what we're really focused on, is how much can the de Blasio administration deliver and the promise of a fairer and especially safer city for those poor areas.
And looking forward, you're going to obviously continue to track these numbers. You had one conclusion that you put in the report, was that with the administration, the mayor talking about how there could possibly be an economic downturn and preparing for that economic downturn, that raised alarm bells, considering that welfare rates went up last year.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, the mayor made a point when he introduced his budget of, cautioning New Yorkers about what to expect from the budget, that we need to be careful that, economic expansions don't go on forever. But at the same time, they believe that, so that raises the question, if welfare enrollment, if welfare rolls grew during the good times, what's going to happen during the bad times? Ultimately, they're sticking with the same goals of more mobility, less government dependence as past administrations, and they think that they can be more effective in meeting those goals. We'll have to see.
And looking ahead, when is the next? That would be the fourth part of the study, I believe. When is that going to come out, or when are you planning to have that come out? And how long are you going to do this? Are you going to track through the whole administration? Yeah,
we're going to track through the whole administration. We're going to continue to be looking at crime and welfare enrollment, and we're also going to start looking at other things that as the data become available. The data for the first year of the New York City public schools under de Blasio the test scores will become available in August. So we're going to be looking at how well did the schools in poor neighborhoods perform, how much have they improved since Bloomberg, and also as more census data come online, data from the American Community Survey, we'll be able to look, maybe a little bit more at things like poverty rates, job numbers. This is a multi-year project.
Great. Well, it's very exciting stuff. We'll be excited to follow this all the way through. Steve Eide, the Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Michael.